Welcome back to another episode of Boom and Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry. And we're a week away from the draft, rolling on with the running backs. Final thoughts on the running backs in this class. Running backs, it's been one of the topic of conversations for a while. I've talked about it at the beginning of the process, talking about it again. Running backs have made kind of a cycle. So it goes back to the whole, this is a passing league mantra that people started that I never bought. I've always said it's cyclical and it's going to come back to power run and the bell cow, and it has. And not only just in the play style, but in the draft too, where we've seen people taking premium picks on running backs. And so that's no longer a conversation. But the fact is you can still get really productive backs at any round, as we saw with Kareem Hunt breaking out last year. Because running backs, like quarterbacks, is very dependent on other things, and mainly the offensive line. If the offensive line is rocking, ready to go, you can do things. One of the guys that I just, honestly, I thought he was an average prospect, but he got knocked down so far because people just hated him at his school, was Corey Clement from Wisconsin last year, and he ended up going undrafted. So it was very much what we thought. But he got on with the Eagles and he won a Super Bowl. He was a big part for them. And again, so that just goes to show, like, that round stuff don't matter for running backs. It really doesn't. Will he ever be like MVP running back? No, but still, they can be productive. And so that's the truth of it. So this class, looking at this class, I give this class a C+. When I graded it, again, I look at the top level talent of the class, then I look at the depth of the class, and I average the grade C+ for me. I just feel like the top level talent is bare. I mean, Saquon Barkley is great, but it's only him. After him, it's a huge drop off. Now, Saquon is big star himself, but again, it's just nobody close to him after that. And then as far as the depth, I think running backs will always have depth because of what I talked about. But for the most part, there's a good handful of backs that are just power backs in this whole thing. And so when you kind of look at it, there's a handful that can do a number of things, but as you get deeper into the rounds, guys that can play, that can contribute, but they just kind of one-dimensional. So I didn't give it a huge depth, and it definitely doesn't have a high ceiling for me, so C+. But getting into some of the guys that I really like, Saquon, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him. We know about Saquon Barkley. But I will say the one thing that really sells me on Saquon is I think he has his head on right. When you look at his backstory, just being a really little dude in high school. And so people know him as a workout warrior now, but that's not how it started. And so it's nice when you see the guys that had, the rags to riches type story. And I think if you listen to him, he says the right things. He comes off humble. In the game, I think he has fun, but he also is he got swag to him. So I don't know if he's completely humble, but he at least says the right things. And so I think he has his head on pretty straight. And so that makes me understand that out of all the talent he has, he's willing to get better. So that's why I really put a stamp on Saquon. As far as the other guys I like, Rashad Penny out of New Mexico. I think he definitely, put his name on the map with the Senior Bowl and whatnot. I don't know. It's some running backs, that despite the numbers and things you can measure, they just got something about them, because running back's a very physical position. It's all about what physical gifts do you have. But there's something that's just an it factor to running backs where they seem to find a way, and I think Rashad Penny has it. And he reminds you of a guy that's smaller and quicker and shiftier, but he has size to him, so he's not a little dude. And so, like I said, the Senior Bowl, he rocked out, and then the Combine. So I really like him. He's got a smooth, type of tempo to him. And I think he has really good vision. And so I'm excited to see what he does. And then another guy that I like, wow, I was just blanking. Who's the other guy? Who's the other guy that I like besides, Rashad Penny? Another guy that I like kind of down the line is Akron Wadley. There we go, out of Iowa. And Akron Wadley, I think he didn't put up the numbers a lot of people were expecting of him. And even in the games, I could tell that, like, when he broke runs, they were never from huge distances. So you couldn't really get a tell of his speed if he had a second gear to outrun people. So his 40 being pedestrian wasn't a super shock to me, but still I think his running style, his ability to navigate, he's a smaller guy, so he's got the shiftiness, the quickness, in short area, but he also runs between the tackles when he has to. And he's a great, pass threat, hard to tackle in open space. I just think, Watley, is going to be one of those gems / sleepers that people, kind of go in the mid round and can really do some damage because, I mean, again, you're at Iowa where it's a run heavy scheme and it's definitely, pro style in a lot of ways. So I think he's not a shotgun runner. He's used to getting it, off the handoff and all those different things. And I really think he can do some things. So those are the guys that I really, feel good about. Now as far as the guys that, either risky or I might not feel as good about, there's not too many on this list, to be honest. But the number one is probably Darius Geis. A lot of people really love him and all that. And I wouldn't say a bad feeling about him. I'm just uneasy about him. He's got a real question mark to him. And so I'm hesitant to really give him a grade. And it's tough because he's one of those guys that had an injury and he looked different this year. And some people will tell you, well, just go by his last year. And I don't do that. I do not do that. My heavy emphasis on the current year, what you are. Because again, and I've talked about this before in my philosophy, if you regress due to injury or anything else, it's for a reason. And it doesn't give me any confidence that you can end up back where you were. There's no guarantee of that. And so while I take it into consideration, it makes me uneasy because I thought he was very effective this year. And honestly, if I was grading Geis just off this year, I would say he looks about a second round back. And factoring into some of the stuff he did last year, okay, I think he was very different, but I think this year helped him better because he had to be more deliberate in his runs and not dance so much like a Saquon Barkley. So I like that part about him this year, but he just didn't have the same physical attributes. So in that running back, you already got a ticking time clock. So it's tough for me to get behind him. Even I think at his best, I don't see this first round pick that everybody else sees. So hard to get behind guys for me. And then, yeah, I mean, that's honestly the one that I feel the most weary about. There's no other guys that I dislike or whatnot. Some guys I feel might be risky. You got a guy like Kerryon Johnson. Again, injury, look totally different. I don't know. He's such a tweener. Like, he's a former receiver. His body's just a little different. His play style doesn't wow you. And then he had the hamstring injury. I think there's parts about his game that if you put it all together, he could be really, really productive. But I just don't know where he is health wise. But again, I don't dislike him. And then Bo Scarborough, again, he's very much like Derrick Henry. A lot of people try to say he's not. He's very much like Derrick Henry. The only thing is that his injuries you don't know because he's been through a lot of injuries. And so, he's pretty much a flyer at this point where you want to take him later in the rounds and see what you could get out of him health wise. I think if he's healthy, he can do what Derrick Henry does to a lesser extent, but it's tough to take him on injuries at that running back position. And so, as far as sleepers though, and there's an argument for a lot of people, but really for me, Kalen Ballage out of Arizona State, he's a big sleeper to me because he was a former receiver as well. He receiver coming out of high school and quarterback, one of those athletes, but a receiver. He's got long arms. I mean, you watch him in some of his pass plays. He's not lining up out wide and being a receiver, but you can see his catch radius is pretty unique. So when you're talking about matching up with a linebacker or something in a pass game, that's something you got to take into consideration because not a lot of running backs have that type of catch radius with those arms. And so that's intriguing, number one. His size, they had him like 6'3" or whatever. He ended up measuring at 6'1" and some change. But you just look at him, he looks like a big dude. He plays with good power, but he has shown with his 40 and his combine workout that he has some explosion in speed. And even in some games, you saw him pulling away from people. So you got a height, weight, speed guy that is pretty interesting right now because he brings a lot of dynamics. Has he had a chance to put it all together at Arizona State? Probably not. But if you're a team that, want to pick him in the later rounds when he's available, I think you could probably get a lot of action out of him, to be honest with you. And then another sleeper is Josh Adams out of Notre Dame, and I'm a little weary. I mean, because he's kind of a flyer with his injury history. And people say his offensive line really made him look good. And I don't know. I fall in love with Notre Dame guys, to be honest with you. But still, I think watching Josh Adams, there's that it factor you can't measure that I think he has. And I remember early on, because again, I don't watch college ball, but I remember early on just Josh Adams was all over. That's all they talked about. Heisman. Josh Adams is killing it. And then it just went away. I mean, I don't think that's for nothing. And so if you're talking about 4th, 5th or around on down, I would take a flyer on Josh Adams because I think there might be something there, especially if you got a good line in front of him. So those are the guys I'm kind of looking at. But, yeah, so that's pretty much my thoughts on the running back class. I mean, it starts and ends with Saquon Barkley. Some people talk about Geis, but I'm not really worried about that. It's kind of status quo. It's really about what team you got to put around these running backs. Somebody out of this group is going to look good, and so I'm not too worried about it. But I'd like to hear what you think. Go to the comment section. Tell me what you think about these running backs. Any that you think you want your team to target. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.